Hello, and welcome to the Early Career Researcher podcast, your regular discussion on all things relating to the life and work of an early career researcher working in the humanities. I'm Charlie, and today I'm joined by Anna, who we met before in episode 4. Hello, Anna. Say hello to everybody.
Hello, Charlie. How are you today?
We're great. We're so excited to have you back because you were amazing in the last episode you were in. So
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a new contributor who is Laura Gattigan, who joins us from the US. Hello, Laura. How are you?
I'm very well. Hello, everybody. Hi, Anna. Nice to meet you. Hi, Charlie.
Very nice to meet you, Laura.
We'll have a chance to meet Anna and Laura again in a minute when we introduce our kind of personal interest in today's topic. So our topic today is one that can be deeply personal. It can be extremely stressful, and it can really exacerbate the issues faced by early career researchers. And our topic is having children in academia. Whether you are certain that you don't want children, or whether you do, but you don't know exactly when and how to make it happen around your career, or whether you've already got children and you're just working it all out as you go along, the issues that we face as academics and parents, or as academics and aspiring parents, can have a huge impact on our job satisfaction and our overall happiness with our place in life. So before we recorded this episode, I thought I'd gauge some opinion. I put out a Twitter poll early today on my personal Twitter page, and I asked the question, hang on, I should have had this ready. The question I asked on my Twitter page was, academic colleagues, has your academic career influenced whether or not you have had children? And has it influenced when you have children? And it was a simple yes or no answer. About 50 votes, 58% of people said yes, that their academic career has influenced whether or not they had children and when they had children. 42% said no, which I thought was more balanced than I was expecting. What do we think, Anna and Laura? What do you think?
I think that's surprising.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I agree, but that's very good. I think that's very positive.
Yeah.
But I also went on Reddit. I have a personal Reddit account, and you never know what you're going to get on Reddit. But I asked basically the same question, a simple poll in the Reddit sub that's just called Academia, which has like 100,000 members or something. And a much higher proportion of people said that their academic career had affected their either their situation or when they had it and so on. So I thought Twitter was more balanced than that. But you know, we can have our thoughts on this later on. So we thought we'd get together and talk over some of our experiences of this potential minefield. So if you want to get back to us on this topic and you have your opinions, you're very welcome to share them. You can leave reviews or comments on our Spotify feed. You can follow us on Twitter, X, at ECR Podcasters, and on Blue Sky, where our name is also ECR Podcasters. You can email ecrpodcasters@gmail.com. We'd love to hear it if you have your own personal accounts on this, and we might feedback with them on a future episode. This episode will be accompanied by a blog with some useful links on the topics discussed, and you can find this in the podcast description, but also by going to our website, which is called the Early Career Researcher Hub. The address for that is ecrpodcasters.wixsite.com/ECRHub. And we have blogs that summarize our podcast episodes. If you think the URL for our website is too long, give us some money and sponsor us, and we'll have a shorter website URL. Okay, so let's get going. Before we start, I thought it'd be useful if Laura and Anna could outline to our listeners your current situation regarding parenting. So are you parents? Do you want to be parents? Who wants to start? Wave at me, whoever's ready to go first. Let's start with Laura. So Laura, tell us about your parenting experience.
I have two sons. One is 15 and one is 18. So the older one is in university himself. So I'm at the sort of end of the parenting experience. I had my children kind of very late in life. So 42 and 45. That's how old I was when I had my kids. And I had them when I was sort of right smack dab in the middle of trying to find an academic job, which wasn't great. but that's my parenting situation.
So you had your PhD by that point?
I did. I had my PhD. I did not have a full-time job. I didn't have anything like that. And
Wow.
my husband is an academic as well. So the one benefit of that is that he has a flexible schedule. So I don't know how much you want me to get into this now, but in the US, our parental resources are really bad. We don't have paid parental leave at all, unless you're in a state that happens to have that. So I can stop there. We can talk about that later if you want to talk to Anne.
Yeah, great. Okay, so Anna, what's your situation?
Well, I am an early career researcher, so I'm not in a permanent position yet, and I'm a mother of a 16-month-old toddler. It's my only, first and only child. So quite new to parenting, and I really, really look forward to hearing what Laura has to say and all the tips she has to share
Help
with
us.
us.
Help us. And I'm also a parent, if anyone's interested. I have a 5-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter, and I am still on fixed-term contracts. I had my son when I was at the end of my first fixed-term contract, and I had no idea what job I was going to have after that, so it was kind of stressful. And I had my daughter when I was a bit more secure, but by that point also we'd given up caring and we just wanted to get on, and we can talk about that later, about timing and that kind of thing. So yeah, a range of experiences, I guess. And I guess like myself and Anna, we encapsulate some of the more stressful end of, you know, fixed term and stuff. And Laura, you too as well, 20 years ago. So
Yeah,
true. We'll draw on these experiences today. So let's start with the question. And people ask me this all the time. So it's a really good one, I think, is there a good or a bad time to have children as an academic? And what sorts of things might we want to know before we make that decision about what's a good or a bad time? Anna, can I invite you to kind of give your perspective on this? Maybe you can reflect on your own situation. Is there a good or a bad time to have children as an academic?
Well, that's a tricky question, I would say, because
I'm sorry.
it really,
I'm sorry.
no, that's fine, because it really depends on a range of factors and on your personal circumstances, I find it. So I guess in an ideal world, the perfect moment to have children as an academic would be when you manage to secure a permanent position, simply because, you know, because of the security that it brings. But that's not always possible for a number of reasons. We face this incredible scarcity of permanent jobs in our field, in humanities and in history. But also it depends a lot on your age, you know, at the time you come to the job market, as was my case. So I guess that question, or the answer to that question, is both yes and no. Theoretically, yes, there would be an ideal time to have children, but that's not always possible. And I guess the important thing is that the academic job market should not stop you from having children, regardless where you're at, if this is something that you really want.
That's
a really good, strong answer. I like that. What do you think, Laura? Do you agree? Do you have other opinions on this?
I think that Anna's opinion is a good one. I think it's true that if you can do a permanent job and then have children, that's perhaps the ideal. I wasn't able to do that. And in some ways, having finished the PhD and then having children and then getting a permanent job was actually easier for me. I think the United States perspective is quite different because we don't have paid family leave. The only thing we have is a placeholder. You can't lose your job for having a child, but that's all you get. So depending on what state you live, if you're one of the 13 lucky states, now there's 12 weeks of paid parental leave. But when I was having my children, that didn't exist. So if I was going to have children after getting a permanent job, it would have been a very difficult thing to do. That would have been really tough because the demands of that were, significant when you're trying to get tenure. Now that I have tenure, this would be a great time to have children if I wasn't 60. However, that's not working out. So I agree, there's no perfect time. I think if you are in the UK Europe system, having a permanent job before you have children is fantastic, because there are benefits that they can't deny you, and you're in a very privileged position. If you're in the US, that privilege doesn't necessarily exist. So having them before you have a permanent job, and that's not ideal either. But if you have a super supportive partner or a supportive environment that helps you, it might be better to have your kids first before the sort of grueling teaching research service demands sort of hit you.
I want to talk about parental leave a bit more in a minute, but can I just ask you an immediate question, Laura? How easy did you find it to get back into your academic work after presumably a period of not doing academic work or not doing very much of it?
It was really tough. The only thing I really tried to keep doing was research and writing. And of course, that's the hardest thing to do when you have children. But, right? It's
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Right. So that's really the only thing I could manage to do. Again, my husband's an academic, so I had a part-time job on a campus that was not a teaching position. It was a more part-time administrative position. So I kept my sort of feet in the game a little bit, and was able to do an occasional conference, present an occasional paper, throw an article together after much time and energy, and do an occasional publication. But getting back into it was really, really tough.
Yeah. There's pressure, isn't there? Because we all feel like if we miss out on anything, then we're falling behind all the time. And
Yeah.
even if we're working full time, some of us think that, don't we? So
very true.
tricky. So maternity and parental leave. Anna, can I ask you, because you've recently experienced it, you were in a temporary position, right? But you were still entitled to parental leave, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
At the time, I had this fixed term lectureship, so I was entitled to various benefits. And I must say that the institution I was working at the moment was really, really generous. They have still a very good really good package for birthing people. I'm not entirely sure how it works for fathers, but it was great for me. For instance, I can give you an example. I know that this varies between institutions, but here in the UK, where I'm at, all universities have to respect the entitlement that birthing people have to a period of 6 weeks leave, which is normally fully paid. And then after that period, the packages vary slightly, and how much you will earn from your, monthly salary can also vary. It depends on the institution. Normally after 5 to 6 months, you will then enter the stage of what they call the statutory maternity pay, which is a fixed rate for, everybody. Everybody will earn the same benefit, or will have the same benefits. But there are also other interesting options when you take up maternity leave. For instance, I managed to split my maternity leave into 2 blocks. So I was on maternity leave for 4 months, and then I went back to work, and I worked for another 3 months. And during that period, my husband stayed with our child, and then I was able to return to the second block. In practice, this is called shared parental leave, which is something that actually worked really well for us.
You're very lucky that you had him to help there. I'm going to say, I think that makes me want to say like the role of partners in a minute, but we can talk about that in a minute.
Sure.
You mentioned parental leave for fathers, and so obviously this is something I've experienced, the only stipulation that you get in the UK at the moment is 2 weeks of paid full-time father's leave, and then you have to go back to work. And if anyone's had children, you know, the difference between a newborn and a 2-week-old is not great. So it's interesting.
No.
In our situation, my partner was working for a university when we had our first child, and we timed it quite well in that we had him right at the end of summer, at the end of August. And so she had basically done that whole academic year. She'd done a whole academic year before that at the same institution. And so even though we moved and I got a new job in a whole new town, and she told that institution she was never going to be able to come back and work for them, because she'd been working there for long enough, that institution had to give her full-time maternity pay, and she got that for 6 months. And then after 6 months, it went down to something like, you know, the statutory that you mentioned, Anna, for another 3 months or so. So we actually got quite lucky there with that kind of social security system that we experienced there, even though she was never going to go back to work there.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well done for timing it so well.
I mean, it was pretty random, I have to say. Anyone's had children, you know, whatever. You can't always decide everything. So who here thinks that their partner was crucial to the process and you couldn't have done it without your partner? Laura's like rolling her eyes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
This could not have worked if he wasn't an academic, to be perfectly honest. If he didn't have that kind of flexibility, we could not have done this. I don't think we could have ever done it.
Yes, absolutely. My partner isn't an academic, but he also has a very flexible job. He's an artist, and without him, I wouldn't have managed. And especially because we don't have a support network around us. We both live far away from our families, which makes everything so much harder, but not impossible, which is, you know, important to underline. And yes, I do think that we shared our duties as parents in a very balanced and equal way, and that's why it worked so well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting, if you are currently in an academic role and you're thinking about, you know, now's the time you want to start thinking about children, always do talk to your employer about the benefit packages that might be available to you. As Anna said, they vary according to where you're actually working across different institutions. So check with your employer and they'll be able to give you all of the information. But I'd say in general, Northern Europe, pretty good. The rest of Europe and the UK, all right. US, free for all.
Dreadful, really bad. But I will say, depending on your institution, this is really variable as well, because I had a lot of institutional support, even though I was working part-time as an administrator. There was, our provost happened to be a woman and very understanding about what was going on. And really, I was able to sort of hoard my sick days, which you're not technically supposed to do, and use them for my maternity leave. And that's actually, you know, she let me do that. And everybody around me sort of, if I had doctor's appointments, they'd be like, all right, well, I mean, I was directing an office, so I wasn't like punching a clock. That would have been so much harder. So I had that privilege to not worry about that. But I had an institution that, despite the lack of sort of systemic support, gave me a lot of informal support, which was crucial.
But also in the US, like, it costs money to have children, right?
Oh my God, it's so expensive. Well, this is the other thing. I mean, we have a really good insurance program at the university, so we did very well, and it wasn't free, but it wasn't astronomical. So if you are not insured, oh God help you. It's it's not.
What we're talking about, give us a ballpark figure.
If you're not insured, it can cost $6,000, $7,000 easily, maybe more, depending.
I
But
just
yeah.
wouldn't have children. Would
Well,
you,
yeah,
Anna? I don't know.
no, if I hadn't
Probably
this sort
not.
of support, there's no way I would have a child or even two.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, two. I'll give you one, but not two. Who knows? Who knows?
Well,
Amazing. So, yeah, go.
I guess I was about to say also the one other thing about this, and someone at my point in my career, I'm tenured already, and I'm super grateful for that. But as I look out on the horizon and look at my retirement, the time I took off and had part-time jobs in order to make this happen for a family has a real serious repercussion in my ability to retire. So that's another thing. You don't really think about it when you're childbearing age, but looking ahead, it's another thing to consider.
Yeah, and I think thinking more about when and when not to have children, it's a really good question because in my circumstances, if it were up to me, we wouldn't have had children when we did because I was in temporary roles and I was uneasy about that whole thing. My temporary lectureship was coming to an end when we were about to have my son. And I thought that was a bad environment to be having children because it's a stressful thing anyway. And so to have that added stress and that pressure, I've got to find the next job because I've got a family and that kind of thing. I don't know, like in the end, my partner just said to me, look, now or never, I need to do this. Let's do this. And I was like, okay. And once I got over that, I kind of cared a bit less that I'd kind of told myself, right, well, it's okay now, it's happening. I don't know. Anna, what's your experience of that? Did you experience the same kind of thing?
Um, yes, um, it is an interesting moment in your life when you come to the realization that, okay, that's it, I'm ready. When of course, we're talking about planned
Yeah, of course.
pregnancies, but
Yeah, have
and
ones too, of course,
it is quite an interesting moment because I felt that for many years I was not ready. I knew I wanted a child, at least one, but I felt like I wasn't in the right mindset or in the right position. And I kept saying, when I finish my PhD, I'll think about it. But then I started my job as a lecturer at a university, and then I really wanted to make the most of that experience. But it reached a point, and this is something that it's a difficult, it's a delicate subject, but someone needs to start talking about this in a more direct way, I would say, which is fertility. And I was a mature student. I finished my PhD, I believe I was already 33 or no, 34 or 35. And then I realized, well, it's not as if I want to wait much longer, because we need to think about female fertility and how, if I keep waiting for that permanent job, I may be 45 and then I may not be able to have children. And I know there are many women who manage, and that's absolutely wonderful. And we have here an example of Laura, you've had children in your 40s, which is brilliant. But there are many women who unfortunately don't manage. And I knew I didn't want to be in that position. So I literally had to think, that's it. I want this to happen, so I have to be brave to just accept it and embrace the challenge.
I'd like to build off that as well, Anna, because as you mentioned, because I was older, I had not actually planned on having children. I married very late as well. I married at 37. And I had sort of, I was very comfortable with the idea of being single and not having any children. But after I got married, after years, I was fine with it. But when I met my husband, it was so clear that he was going to be a great father and he would really wanted to try. So like you, I didn't really feel like I had the luxury to wait around forever. So after 5 years of marriage, I said, okay, let's give this a shot. I don't really honestly think it's going to work. So I didn't really have a lot of optimistic feeling about this situation. But like you, I really felt like this is a now or never. It doesn't really matter what my career is doing. I don't have a permanent job. He has a permanent job, so that's nice. But I think he wasn't even tenured yet. He was tenure track, but hadn't gotten tenure. But there was really no option. You just had to sort of, take the plunge because it wasn't even clear it was going to work anyway.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly how I felt. And I think that it's really important for people to think about that. I think it's a topic, fertility, female fertility especially, that people don't like to think too much about because they think, oh, we believe in science, things will happen whenever we want. But I think we live lives in which we think we are more in control than we actually are of our own biological responses and our bodies, and it's not always like that. So I really think this is important to take into consideration when you're thinking about having a family.
And I had a comment on my Reddit post, actually. I encouraged people to comment, and one of the comments was from a person who I believe may have been female, who said, we need to think about fertility, exactly as you guys have just said, because they said they waited until they had a permanent tenure track job in the US, must be, and they had their first child after quite a lot of issues when they were something like 40. And then they haven't so far been able to have a second one, and it's 3 or 4 years afterwards or so on, and they've tried IVF and they've lost babies and so on. So yeah, it's worth bearing in mind. And we're not saying it's going to happen to everybody, right? Because Laura's living proof that you can do it, but it's also worth bearing in mind. I want to say another thing about this. I think one of the reasons we just went, okay, let's do it, was I'd read someone who tweeted about this very topic years and years ago before we had our son. And someone had said, when should I have children? I'm really worried, blah, blah, blah. I'm an academic. I don't know when I can do it. And someone commented, and it was one of the most powerful things I've ever heard on this topic. And the person basically said, academia can take from you your family because you have to move away from them. It can take from you money because you don't earn as much. Maybe your earning potential is much later in life. It can take your stress. It can take your health. It can take so many things from you. And one thing I refuse to let academia take from me is my unborn children, and I'm going to do this. And I was like, wow, love it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And very powerful. And in fact, Charlie, many years ago, we've had several conversations about having children as academics. And I remember you mentioning that, and that sentence really stayed with me. And I actually replay that in my mind often, before I had my son.
So whoever you are, that person, I can't remember who it was, but if you're listening, if that's you, thank you, because my children as children wouldn't exist without you.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And do identify yourself. Tell us your name.
So I was just gonna aim it's them now, but whatever.
That's incredible. That's absolutely a stunning way of thinking about it.
Yeah. So okay, we're going to need to move on, I think, to our next topic. So let's have a think about that. Okay, great. So let's move on and talk about our next question. And I wanted to ask you guys, in your experiences, how does parenting affect the process of actually doing academic work? That could be good or bad. Does parenting benefit the process of academic work? I've got a couple of examples here. I put, for example, tiredness, routines, concentration, mobility. That means like being able to travel and do things, organizational skills, cognition, etc., etc. So, I mean, I think we should ask Anna this because she's right in the middle of it at the moment. You've got how old's your son? 16 months?
16 months.
So yeah, tell us, what's your experience of this? Unload, go.
Right. Well, that's something that I'm still trying to figure out, to be honest. Some days I just try to step back a bit and think, how is this going for me? And the answer is not always very clear for a number of reasons, including because I'm too tired to be able to step back and think clearly about it. But well, I think that some days, and considering that we do not have a support network, I always like to emphasize this, because for people who have family, friends around, or family that can, you know, go and visit you often,
Or
I
a
think it can,
nanny. Some people have nanny.
or a
Oh, God.
nanny.
Oh my God.
I'm sure it must feel slightly different, but some days I feel that I'm just surviving. It's just about surviving another day, juggling work and childcare, and feeling like I'm not excelling, you know, at all in any aspect of my life. But having said this, and I know that this sounds quite negative, so there is a but here, and the but is really positive, I think, is that I've noticed that since I've become a mother, my mindset has changed radically. So
Wow.
I think that I'm much less of an overthinker than I used to be. I'm much less anxious as well, which is interesting because people say, oh, you have children and it's worries all the time. Well, yes, but it's of a different kind. And at the same time, when you have children, um, something that I find really beautiful about motherhood is how much I need to be in the present moment. And that is something that was very difficult for me in the past. I was always worrying about getting the next job, publishing the next article, the next research project. I now don't have time or energy to think about that. So I deal with what I have before me in that exact moment. And this is
Yeah.
actually really nice. And I feel like I enjoy my work more as a consequence of that. When I'm at work, I feel that even though I'm very tired, I always say my state is of perpetual tiredness now, but at least when I'm at work, I would say that I waste less time because I know I have a given
Yeah.
time to achieve a certain
Yeah.
goal. I set more realistic goals as well, I think. So there are a lot of positives, I would say, even if you're tired, even if you're sleep deprived when they're very small. I think that yes, and children also require, you know, you have to play,
Yeah.
and
Let's
when you
start.
when you play, you're just relaxing and allowing yourself to use other parts of your brain and be creative in other ways, and that's actually I found very lovely contrast to academic work, and I feel that at the end of the day, I am physically tired, but I'm less emotionally tired than I used to be, which is really
Wait, wait,
interesting.
wait till they hit 2.
Maybe, I guess.
You
But
know, that bit about efficiency is
mhm,
really interesting. I asked one of my colleagues in my current job, who's got a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and she said to me she cannot believe how efficient she is now that she's got these 2 children. And she says to me now, if she did her PhD now, she'd get it done in half the time that she did when she was a kind of mid-20s, confused, worrisome,
yes,
nothing was ever perfect. Now it doesn't matter, just get it in and that kind of thing. I don't know.
yes,
I agree.
and if I may just add that I think that some days I wonder, oh, am I doing my job right? And because I'm not spending the same amount of hours I used to spend on academic work as before, but things get done, and things get done well. And so that's a really good sign, and probably just tells me that once again, we are perhaps become much more efficient, better at multitasking, even though multitasking is not necessarily a good thing, but you don't have another option. And you just carry on. you just find ways of carrying on, and probably carrying on happier, much happier, I would say, if of course children is something you would like to have.
I'm so happy to hear that. It's so nice to hear that. So perspective is a really interesting way to see it. What do you think, Lara? How does parenting affect your process of doing academic work?
I would agree with Anna that it makes you far more efficient. I think it makes you more disciplined. In the same way, you have this one short window to do either writing or a little bit of research or reading an article from your discipline. You have one tiny chunk of time, and if you don't make use of it, it's gone. So I think there is this sort of portioning out of time in a way that I was not good at before. The other thing I would say, I listened to your podcast that you all did about writing rituals, which was such a great podcast. By the way, it's fantastic. But it made me think about the ways in which my children have changed the way that I write. I'm much less fussy than I was before children. I used to have absolute silence. No one could be around me. Now I can write almost anywhere. I can write. I wasn't able to write home because everything I looked at reminded me of something I hadn't cleaned or hadn't done. It was like the whole house was shouting at me all the time. But now, after the children, it's sort of like, I just don't care anymore. So you sort of lose, maybe it's exhaustion, but you lose the sort of stress about, things being perfect. That old phrase, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, maybe is what I'm talking about. Like Anna said, you think to yourself, okay, this is good enough. I'm shipping this off. This is good enough. I'm closing this chapter. I'm setting up this adjunct. Whatever it is, you have a lot less anxiety about the perfection issues, I think, with children. And it does give you a completely different perspective on your work. So your internal landscape mentally has totally shifted. And the things that used to be the most important things in your life are no longer that. That's huge. And it can either make you feel bad about yourself all the time because you're remiss in every area. I felt like that all the time. You're always remiss no matter what you're doing. But if you can get past that, I think it allows academia, as you said earlier, Charlie, to take less from you. It doesn't have the power to take from you the things that it used to have, I guess.
I was going to make the point, though, exactly what you just mentioned about how, as a parent, especially with young children, you can feel like you're not giving 100% of yourself to anything, and you're spreading yourself out over so many things. My partner says this all the time, that she feels like she's not good enough at her job, and she's not good enough at being a parent. She's not good enough at looking after herself as well, because you remember, like, you have a life as well. And I feel like this so much. I feel so like if I want to go away on a research trip, then I'm failing my family because I'm leaving them for 3 days or whatever. But if I stay at home and look after them because it's school holiday or whatever, I'm failing my career because I should be doing work or whatever. So I still haven't reached that stage that you were both mentioning where you just kind of block it off and go with it, right? I'm really bad at that. I'm so self-critical at like, how much work have I done this week and how much parenting have I done this week and whatever. So that, I think, is a challenge that's worth recognizing. I also wanted to talk about tiredness, right? Because we both mentioned it, all mentioned it, but wow, do you get tired with children? And I don't think I've not been tired since my son was born 5 years ago. Actually, I lie. I went to a conference in America on my own without children, and the first night of the conference, I slept like 14 hours, and it was the best sleep I've ever had in my life. I went to bed at like 8 or whatever, and you treasure those moments. But tiredness happens, right?
I so appreciate that perspective, but I have to tell you, this is probably too personal, but I'm American, so we don't care about that kind of stuff. But I breastfed my children, and when I went to conferences, I had to pump. And oh, was that rough? Oh, I can't tell you. So this is back in, you know, in the dinosaur years. There was no breast pumping room. I was in an electrical closet at Kalamazoo in one of
Wow.
the newer buildings trying to pump. It was horrific. It was
Were
terrible.
you,
Oh,
were you
I'm
on
so
your own?
sorry.
You just pumping to, you know.
I didn't bring the kids with me. I think the kids were, oh God, well, Alex had to have been, I think he was not even one yet. And I went to a conference.
Right,
This is
yeah,
where
yeah.
this is where your partner comes in. Like, I
Mhm.
don't know what I would have done with that guy, without that guy. So there were these moments though, the conferences were great, but you were never off duty as a woman. If you're breastfeeding, you're constantly figuring out, where am I going to pump? When am I going to pump? Can I figure out to do that in between these sessions I'm presenting a paper?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, it was
Absolutely.
so rough. It was so rough.
Do you know, I think Leeds, I think, a conference in Leeds, I've seen like I've seen breastfeeding like at the back of a conference room, right? And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's brilliant that people are comfortable enough to do that now.
Yes.
But you
Well,
know, what if you're not?
they have rooms now. I mean, this is, again, this is a relatively new, and Anna, you're probably familiar with this too, that most big conferences now have facilities for breast pumping.
Yes.
And in fact, when I was running the Haskins Society conference, and I'm still doing that, there's always a place where you can go to
Mhm.
pump if you have to pump. So there was a revolution not long after I was in the electrical closet. There sort of was a revolution about women in academia who said, this is outrageous. We need a place to do this. This has to happen. So a bunch of parents got together, and now there are facilities to do that.
That's
Mm.
wonderful. Oh, thank you for that, Laura.
You
Thank you.
can't
Appreciate
take, I
the
can't take
information.
credit for that. I can only take credit for the electrical closet.
But like also like the pressure element of this is worth thinking about as well, right? So like I'm male. I've never had to breastfeed, but my experience of going away to conferences without children and that kind of thing is feeling like I'm neglecting them and feeling like I then owe it to my partner when I come back a huge debt because I've gone away and had my fun and whatever, doing my academic, doing my job. And like when I come back, I'm like, oh, well, I've got to look after the children extra carefully and really, really well when I come back because of that pressure. Oh, doesn't it?
It is
Yeah.
hard, yes. But I guess you only feel that way because you love your job. If you didn't, probably you would just say, oh no, I have to go to a conference and this is such a horrible sacrifice. But
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, it is really difficult. I feel that way every time I leave for work, and Stuart, my partner, stays at home with our son who's not in nursery yet and looks after him, even though this is something that we both want and we both agreed to
Yeah.
do and we're happy
Yeah.
with, but it is hard. It is very difficult. I think that yes, it's difficult to feel like you're doing a good job at parenting and academia, but again, I guess is that really the reality? Probably not.
I looked at you from the outside and you're doing pretty well from what I see. And we met up, didn't we? I've met your son and he's doing pretty well
Yes,
too. So, you
yes,
know,
that's true.
whatever.
I think
Um,
I think you're right that our perception of how poorly we're doing is sort of an internal issue.
Hmm.
I mean,
but
I
we
think
could probably, as academics, we can apply that to every part of our life, couldn't we?
exactly right. I was just about to say, as academics, we're driven by these things anyway. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I do want to say one other thing about the sort of effect of children on our research. As Charlie knows, in the summertime, as a US academic, I don't have access to manuscripts unless I go over to where you all are in the summertime. And after the kids were, I'd say 5 and 3, I would leave the US for months at a time. And because my husband's an academic too, summers he was able to manage the whole thing. And I would literally leave the country for a month, 2 months at a time.
I may
Once I
forget
stopped
who you
breastfeeding,
are.
because I needed to do research. And I have to tell you, this is one benefits of having children as an older person. He knew going in that this was going to happen. because I mean, this is what I do for a living, right? So there are going to be huge stretches of time where I am just not even here. So, parenting 100%, more like 150% for him, because I've got to do my thing. He's a historian too, but his stuff is US, so he doesn't have to go anywhere. Everything's digitized. So having a partner who's willing to basically let you abandon the whole family for 2 months at a time is pretty important. And like Anna, we don't have family here. So he was on 100%, and he was willing to do that.
Wow, that's wonderful. And maybe I can follow up on this regarding mobility, research, and the support from our partners. I'm currently in a research position which requires quite a lot of traveling. So I've traveled quite a lot to France and Switzerland in the past month, and we did everything as a family, which was really, really nice. And that's because, once again, my partner has a flexible job. So we did it all together. And our son, who is now 16 months old, has been to, I don't know how many countries already. And and it was absolutely wonderful. So I know that I'm quite privileged that I have a partner that can just, drop everything and follow me. But this is just to say to our listeners that it is not impossible, and our days were actually lovely. In the morning, I used to have breakfast with my son and my partner. Then I used to go to the archives, spend the day there, and then around 5 o'clock or even earlier when the archives close, I joined them and we would explore these little towns and big cities, depending where we were together. And, we have lovely memories from these trips. So, it's about turning something that it's actually quite challenging, especially logistically, into something that you should see it as an opportunity. And if you're breastfeeding, as I was, you can always just, ask them to stay close to where you are, and you can have a break during the day and breastfeed your child, and then off they go again to another museum. So my son has been to, I wouldn't say to more museums than I have, of course, but he has certainly visited some museums that I haven't.
And also, the Instagram post looked amazing. So you gained that as well. All right, so let's move on to our next question. I think we could talk about these things all day, and probably next time we meet at a conference we will. So there we go. I've got a question that I'm going to ask Lara first, but Anna, you can help as well, obviously. Can having children affect your career path? So do you know people who've had changes in their career path, or either augmented or diminished because of children? It's something that people worry about, right? So we have to talk about it. I know from anecdotal evidence, talking to people who are thinking about having children, this is a massive worry. Can it hold you back, or can it help in different ways? What do you think, Lara?
I think this is going to be a not very satisfying answer. I think it really depends on your situation. If you're in the kind of place where there's a lot of support for parental leave, where there's money for parental leave, and you can actually get paid while you have leave, I think it's a lot less damaging to your career. But I think it can really hold you back, for sure. There's no question. I mean, I would have liked to have been more productive as a scholar. I think it didn't cost me in the end all that much, but the projects I'm finishing right now would have been great to have finished 10 years ago, but that just was not in the cards. So I think that you do have to be ready to have your career affected. However, like Anna said, you are much more disciplined as a person generally once you have this enormous sort of section of your life that takes your attention away from your career. You're much more disciplined. I get up really early now. I was a late person all my life, but because of children, I have no choice. I'm up very early. I write very early now because they're school age. So when they go to school, I start writing. I couldn't have done that without children. I would be still asleep. There's no question. So it affects your career, but in some unexpected ways. There's no question in my mind anyway, as an American speaking from a US perspective, there is no question that it costs you. It is a sacrifice for sure.
So it
But-
costs you, what does it cost you? Time? Does it cost
Yes.
you promotions because of that? What?
I would say more than anything, time. Promotion, maybe not. It depends on where you are in your career path. So even US universities aren't allowed to hold you back from promotion because you have children, but it does make things slower and make things more difficult to accomplish. So it's not undoable at all, but it's harder. There's no question. If you're in a UKU sort of Europe perspective, or rather, I'm sorry, context, I think it's quite different. That doesn't mean it's not doable or not valuable. I don't mean to be a complete Debbie Downer. However, there's no question that it's really, really tough. And you have to have the support of someone in your life, whether it's a partner or a parent or whoever, who's really going to help you manage it. Doing it on your own, I don't know how people do it. I know people do it. There's no question people do it. I don't know how. So I'm the sad negative person in this podcast today.
No.
No, not at all.
I honestly, it's important for people to hear it, right? So from my perspective, I can boil it down to like a really black and white thing. Let's say you need to get your second book out before you can be promoted up the chain. Well, having children is going to put that book back potentially because you don't have time to write it, right? So
Absolutely.
It's not the having children that stops you being promoted. It's the not being able to achieve the things that you need on the form to achieve promotion, right? So if you're doing an application form for promotion, get your book out. Otherwise, you can't be promoted. Well, how do you do that when you've got nappies all over the place and people?
And your brain is like a piece of cheese. Like it's
people just. Children ask so many questions. They just ask you all the time.
all the time. It's endless. And then they turn about 15 and they don't ask you anything.
I can't
And
wait. I don't care.
You say you can't wait, but it's very depressing. They don't care about you anymore. They don't care about what you say. It's quite sad. But they turn into very interesting people, so that could be good.
People do say that you have about 12 to 14 summers with your children, and then that's it. And then that's it. They want to do their own thing, and you're in the back seat, and that's it. So just make the most of it, they say.
I agree with that.
Anna, what do you have a perspective on this?
Well, I don't have. Yeah, I don't have much of a perspective in the sense that I'm again an early career researcher. So far I can say that having a child hasn't affected that much. I managed to secure my current position when I was already a mother. In fact, if we can go back to the idea of gaining some perspective and taming anxiety after you become a parent, the best night of sleep I had since my son was born was the night before a job interview.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Simply because I had to travel to attend the interview in the following day, and it was the first and only night I spent away from him, and I just thought, I can sleep now. So I slept.
That's fantastic.
And it was before a job interview where,
normally you don't sleep, right?
Precisely. But going back to the idea of affecting career path, I can't speak from experience, but sometimes I do think about that. And what I've reflected on quite recently was, what will I do if I don't manage to get a permanent job by the time he needs to go to school? And in this case, it may affect my career path, because I may then choose to abandon academia if there are no permanent jobs, or if I don't manage to secure a permanent job, because there are so many great people out there and we're all going for the same jobs. So I may have to leave the field if at any point, my son needs to go to school in 6 years' time, and because he needs and he deserves stability. He deserves to be in a good school with create his network of little friends, and not, to be dragged around the country or countries all the time. So this is something that I think a lot about it, even though I'm trying not to become obsessed with this idea, or I'm still doing my best. I love what I do, but this is the reality. And yes, it's about being pragmatic. And as Laura was saying, it's about, being very clear about the challenges and accepting them, and taking responsibility for the choices you may have to make. And
I have a similar experience after having our children. It was in 2020 lockdown. Our son was 2, and my partner said, I don't like where we live at the moment. I've got a job interview in a place near to where your parents live, because we're from different parts of the country. She had a job interview about half an hour away from where my dad still lives. She said, if I get this job, we're moving there, and you can just commute to wherever you're working. And I was like, okay. And a job. And it's been hard, but I don't regret it, because I live in a beautiful house in a gorgeous part of the country, and we have a support network around us, which is something we keep talking about. He goes to a little village school and he loves it, and our daughter's going to go there as well. And for a while, I was commuting several hours to my job and staying overnight a couple of nights a week. And as Anna will tell you, didn't really enjoy it a whole bunch. But then the job I've got now came up, and it's about an hour away, and I'll never complain about an hour's commute after doing a 5-hour commute. And so far it's working out okay. So that sense of perspective is really worth bearing in mind, that it can tie you to a place, but in a positive way. And recently there was a job going back at the university that Anna and I used to work at, and I chose not to apply for it because I didn't want to be there anymore. I wanted to be where I am. And it made me feel positive that I was able to make that decision for myself, rather than apply for it and not get shortlisted and cry, which is what normally happens. So positive. Do we have any other perspectives on this question to move on? What do you think?
Well, I feel sort of like a complainer, considering I'm the one with tenure and I'm the one.
Yeah, but I would say, from personal experience, Lara, your career advice has been amazing to me for many years. And so whatever level of advice you think you're giving, don't. Like, for example, on this very topic, I remember you saying to me once when I was about to have my second child, Charlie, going from 1 to 2 feels like you've gone from 1 to 10. Yeah. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then when it happened, I was like, you are so right. It really does.
That's amazing.
Oh my God.
We haven't got that long left. So let's finish by asking you, maybe we've talked about some of this already, but do you have any questions that you wish you'd asked people before you had children? Is there anything you wish you knew before you had children, and after you had children, you wish you could pass that advice on to anybody? It's a massive, broad thing, but are there any? Silence.
I think I've asked them all, actually.
Good.
I was completely shameless and approached all my male and female colleagues who have children. And I try to gather as much information as possible and as many different perspectives as possible, so that I would be not only informed, but also, I was going to say ready, but ready is not the right word. That I will have a realistic perspective. And so I felt like I was, I don't think I had any questions left. And Charlie, you were one of the people who I've approached and asked several questions about about parenting. And so I feel I was very well informed. And this is what I recommend other people to do. Don't be scared to approach your colleagues and ask them how. I'm sure they're going to be delighted to talk about their experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I do. I think if I would have known, I think the one thing, I'm not sure anyone could have answered this question, but I talked to my son before this podcast, my 15-year-old in the car the other day. And I said, do you feel like that your mother being in academia and leaving you for months at a time in the summertime, like, do you feel like that was hard on you, or that you've had a difficult
Great
time?
question. Yeah.
Because I knew we were going to talk about this. So I thought to myself, well, here's a first person primary source. And he said, I don't think I know any different. He said, I missed you, but it didn't bother me. When you came home, it was great. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, I was so anxious that my kids would somehow have, some sort of negative effect. It's that remiss thing, being remiss in every area thing. Like, I was going to do my research in all this conference activity, and I embraced that, and I love my job like all of us do. But I thought, God, what a crap parent I'm being. But they don't care. They don't mind. And actually, when we were trying to think of other models of parenting, like, what about other people's parents and how they spend all these summers together and do all these things? And my son said, I don't think I know any parents that aren't academics. So I'm not sure that's a really helpful response, because maybe he's scarred and he doesn't even know it.
I
But
remember
think,
that though, when next time I stay late and go to a paper in the, like, this is something I feel all the time. Staying late and going to a paper and missing bedtime and not seeing them
Absolutely.
until
oh God, yeah.
Yes.
next time I'm doing that,
yes.
I'm going to remember they don't know any different.
They don't. That's exactly my
true.
point. They
I
don't.
cut you off,
That's wonderful, Laura.
That's
Yeah.
my perspective. As long as you love them, they don't feel it. They don't. You're not hurting them. So
Yes, and it's about, this may sound like a huge cliche, but it's about the quality of the time you spend with them, I guess. And at least that's what I try to tell myself. And I guess what you just said, Laura, really proves it. Your son was just very, chilled about that. Yeah, that's what life is, and that's fine. And that's actually a wonderful thing to hear. Thank you.
He's a very pragmatic guy, I guess. I don't know. Well, and I was struck with your thought about being in the moment. Sort of, I'm a terrible multitasker. I'm actually only a monotasker. That's the only thing. I'm very good at laser focus, but I'm terrible when I have to do more than one thing.
Yeah.
But children do make you live in the moment. And I think that is the key. You're not going to hurt them by living in the moment, as long as you're with them and you're in the moment. When you're gone and doing your research in your professional world, you can be in the moment there too, and that won't hurt them. I think it's important. I think that's really good advice, Anna.
Thank you. And thank you for all your great advice, Laura. I've learned so much. It was so great to hear your experience.
Yeah. You say you're the negative one, but you've just ended the whole thing on the biggest positive of the lot. So
absolutely.
I had to redeem myself.
I'm going to wrap up before we go negative again.
Good idea. Good idea.
So, thank you, Anna. Thank you, Laura, for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Just a reminder that if you did, please leave us a review or a comment on our Spotify feed. Please follow us on Twitter or X at ECR Podcasters, and Blue Sky ECR Podcasters as well. We always welcome feedback. You can email us ecrpodcasters@gmail.com. Especially on this topic, if you've got your own perspectives and views that you want to share with us, then please do. And maybe we can have a kind of parenting reunion podcast and hear some later thoughts as we go along. Maybe Anna and I will have a year's worth of parenting and come back in a year's time and, dispel all the things that we said today. We'll see. But yeah, I would just invite my contributors to say goodbye. So goodbye from Anna.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye, Laura.
I jumped on Anna's line. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You're very welcome. you've got to get your word in if you're a parent. So great.
Thanks so much
So
for having us on.
you are very